Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. Now, the National Employers Association of South Africa has approached the High Court in Pretoria to challenge the new code of practice for managing COVID-19 exposure in the workplace. Cabinet implemented the new code of practice last month, aimed at guiding employers and employees in managing exposure to coronavirus. For more on this, we're joined by the CEO of the National Employers Association of South Africa, Gerhard Papenfus. Very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. You've expressed some concern and discomfort. Talk to us about that.
There's not a single element of this code which we do agree with, and we are challenging each and every element of this code. We first of all challenge the constitutionality of the code. We are of the view that mandating vaccines and giving the power to the minister or even an employer, even worse, an employer, to decide that an employee must take or subject him or herself to a medical form or treatment is in contravention of each and every element of the Constitution, the right to dignity, privacy, bodily integrity, and you can go down the list. Can you imagine that a person who has no medical exposure, no medical qualification, can say to an employee, you must subject yourself to a certain treatment, not understanding the circumstances, the health of that person, and well, that's it's unthinkable. The point is, we are of the view that it's unconstitutional, and this act, this code, is under the not the LRA. It's not in terms of it's in terms of the LRA, but it's empowered by the Occupational Health and Safety Act. Mm-hmm. And the Occupational Health and Safety Act is an act that cares or caters for safety in the workplace. And if you are dealing with hazardous biological agents in the workplace, that's the Occupational Health and Safety Act is for that workplace, where hazardous biological agents is produced and processed and used and handled. Now, COVID-19, although this act, this code says COVID-19 is biological hazardous biological agent, it is not an agent confined to the workplace. It's all over. Mm-hmm. You cannot confine that to the workplace. You can try to protect somebody in the workplace against the virus, but the moment he goes out of the workplace, he will be exposed. So it's entirely unrealistic. And that this act, this code, places each and every workplace under the jurisdiction of that particular act in with regard to this hazardous biological agent regulation. So the burden that places on employers is simply impossible to comply with, and it's totally unrealistic. And then there's the other issue that we can't see. It's actually entirely illogical that this the vaccine does not protect you from being infected, and it doesn't prevent you from transmission of the virus. Both the vaccinated and the unvaccinated can spread the virus and become infected. And we also know that whether you are vaccinated or not vaccinated has no impact, no effect on to what extent it will affect you when you get sick. So the reason why we simply cannot comprehend why there's a discrimination between the vaccinated and the unvaccinated, because there is simply no difference. So we don't understand what's going on. I think the government is on a drive to sell vaccines. There's no other explanation, because nothing else makes any sense. They want to sell their vaccines. They've got an obligation to their pharmaceutical masters. They've got to sell this vaccine, because otherwise there's no explanation whatsoever. And the code also makes provision for employers to do a risk assessment, and that's impossible. You know, you see, we will be working with a moving target here. People get vaccinated. After a while, they have to be get a booster. Then after 6 months, they will have to get another booster, and another booster, and another booster, and another booster. The time frames for each employee will there will be a difference, and in each occasion, a new risk assessment will have to be done. This is almost a full-time job, and I'm saying that if somebody says they know how to do this risk assessment, then they don't know what the code requires. This is an entirely unrealistic demand, and it's obviously done by bureaucrats who do not understand this thing.
So just, if you'll allow me to just interrupt you there.
Yes,
if
please.
you speak about a risk assessment, are you talking now about a breakdown of one's symptoms and, you know, also looking at their history and where they've been, whether they think they've been in contact with a person who may have COVID-19? Is that what you're talking about when it comes to
Well, that includes that. That includes that. But that's in respect of the whole workforce. So you must say, you must give the status of your workforce in terms of where they work, what they do, what type of exposures they get in the position where they are, and the environment in which they find themselves. And the moment somebody gets sick or exposed to COVID, then the risk assessment needs to be adapted. And every time somebody is due for another booster, that must state when it needs to happen. If it's overdue, that impacts on the risk assessment. So, and we're talking about a moving target all the time. So I will risk by saying that nobody, business, has done a risk assessment, because it's simply impossible. Mm-hmm. So we're dealing with all these things, and you know, madam, that to be vaccinated, fully vaccinated now, means, in terms of this code, that you have 2 Pfizer vaccines plus a booster. Now, we know that only in terms of the first Pfizer booster, and not Pfizer booster, the Pfizer injection, the first one, and the J&J injection, less than 50% of South Africans had their first one. 44% had the second one. The WHO reckons that only 5% had the booster. So what we're saying is 95% of South Africa at this stage is non-compliant. But unfortunately for government, people have made up their minds. They're not going to do that. People were told at the beginning, you get 1 injection and that's it.
So
Maybe
you've turned your attention now to the Pretoria High Court. What are some of the legal arguments that you'll be putting forward for this matter, and you know, what sort of outcome you're hoping for?
Well, all of the stuff that I've dealt with, the determination that a risk assessment needs to be done, we make out a point that it cannot be done. It's not possible. That it is simply an unrealistic demand. We also say that the Occupational Health and Safety Act, which the code says gives the minister the power to say or provide and demand that employees be vaccinated, that can't happen. Neither can an employer. Parliament perhaps can restrict constitutional rights, but you cannot delegate that to an employer to limit a person's constitutional rights. That is unthinkable. Then, of course, there's the provisions of the OHS. We say making provision for a vaccine under the Occupational Health and Safety Act for a virus of this nature cannot happen. It is actually a bizarre arrangement, a bizarre idea. Then there's the constitutional issues, and we want this whole code in its entirety to be declared ultra-virus and be set aside. We think, and that is what we want to happen, we want to return to the prior 2020 situation where society is freed up and we can continue with our business. None of these provisions are necessary. And majority of South Africans live entirely out of the confines of this virus. Totally. They don't wear masks. They will never wear masks again because it's a nonsense arrangement. They will not be vaccinated. So that's the end of the game. So government can try this. Unfortunately, they are jeopardizing their own prestige as a government by doing this. So the best thing, what we think can happen, set this thing aside. That's our question to the court, request to the court, and let's continue with our lives. Live in freedom, breathe in freedom. You don't need an injection to be protected against this virus. We all have God-given immunity to fight this thing. And where you get sick, there are normal, better ways to protect us, be medicated. There's something like early treatment, something that government has...
If you allow me, just to interrupt you there, will you not now come across as an anti-vaxxer? Because, you know, it may sound like you're encouraging people to not continue getting vaccinated, as you perhaps put this argument to the court.
I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I'm vaccinated. I was vaccinated as a child. My children were vaccinated. I'm not unvaccinated. I'm not unvaccinated. This particular vaccine, we know the following about this particular vaccine. It does not prevent the transmission of the virus. It do not prevent infection. It do not statistically reduce all-cause hospitalization or all-cause mortality.
Does it not reduce the symptoms of COVID-19?
No, it doesn't. You know, in one of my offices, very few people in the household vaccinated. In one of my offices, about 30% are vaccinated. And that's everybody's choice. You know, now during Omicron, the only people that actually got sick were those that were vaccinated.
And what do you make of the deaths that we've seen from COVID-19?
Of the vaccinated or the unvaccinated?
The unvaccinated deaths.
Madam, across the world, more people that's vaccinated die. More people that are vaccinated. A person that's vaccinated, that person's immunity system is compromised. And the more you get vaccinated, the worse it will get. I'm sorry to tell you, if you are vaccinated, you will prejudice your own wealth to the extreme.
Is this according to Mr. Papenfus? Are you a medical doctor? Because, I mean,
Madam, you know I'm not a medic. Madam,
you're not. So this is your opinion.
Sorry,
is this your opinion?
No, madam. No, it's not my opinion.
Okay.
We are misled. We are misled in South Africa. You know what's the problem? We follow the mainstream media with respect that carries one narrative. Now, I'm not a medical doctor, but I can read. And there's overwhelming evidence which I can interpret. Madam, I'm challenging and I'm putting it out to this. Let's have a debate on this station where people that is anti this current situation, not anti-vaxxers, but free choice people who are against this current vaccine because of the dangers, the severe injuries that people get and deaths because of the vaccination. Madam, I'm telling you today that in a year or two, you will remember this interview and you will be bitterly sorry for the fact, I'm telling you, for the fact that you are vaccinated. It is a dangerous thing and people are already reaping the consequences of that. That information is withheld. Government held out incentives. Can you imagine that you can win 1,000 rand if you get vaccinated? Where's the informed consent where a person make a decision? Pfizer says there are 1,290 adverse effects potentially that you can get. Have you read the Pfizer papers that has come out? Not what I say. You know, I find it very strange when a person calls me and then we ask my opinion. When I give my opinion, they ask me whether I'm a doctor.
It is your opinion, and you are entitled to express it. But thank you so much for your time. We're going to have to leave it there for now, and of course I'd like to see what the outcome of this matter in court is. That was NEASA CEO Gerhard Papenfus speaking to the challenge of the National Employers Association of South Africa, challenging the new code of practice for managing exposure to COVID-19 in the workplace, expressing his personal views on this matter.